Well, hello everybody. I think we're going to make a start, even though I think a lot of people are still to arrive, but we'll start on time. Welcome everybody who's here and online. Very nice to see you. We have been holding these conferences, the BEARR Annual Conference, for over 30 years now. This is actually the third conference that we have run as a hybrid conference. Participants across the region where BEARR works, we have you in the room today and other participants online in the UK. Over these past 30 years, as I'm sure you know, our practice has been to work with local civil society organisations, learning from them how best to support them through our small grant scheme, through our Ukraine appeal, through our civil society surveys, which I think some of you will have taken part in, which we've been doing for the last few years to find out how civil society organisations are developing in the region, and of course through our newsletters, lectures, and these annual conferences. So today, we are looking at innovations which our partner civil society organisations have introduced in their health and social welfare work in times of crisis, including war and pandemic. But I think a lot of us probably feel a better description would almost be polycrisis. We are very pleased that the 6 speakers we have today, and welcome and thank you, are all from organisations which have received grants from BEARR in the past. I have quite a lot of admin things to tell you about. First of all, I just need to let you know that the amplification system we're using, this machine, is called an OWL, for very good reasons. It will pick up any noise in the room. It makes it easier for you to speak, but be aware it might pick up conversations with your neighbour. And if you don't want to be broadcast, don't say it. As well as being hybrid, this conference is trilingual, English, Russian, Ukrainian. We have 2 interpreters online from Ukraine. Hello, Lisa, Alex, thank you very much. If you are joining us online, you can choose the language you want to listen to by using the interpretation box. You'll find it at the bottom of your screen. For those of you who are here in the room, we'll transmit the conference in English. Online participants, if you have questions, please put them into the Q&A, not the chat, the Q&A. There's a button at the bottom of your screen. You can type your question in Russian or Ukrainian. It'll be translated into English, and the translation will appear below the relevant question. And the chat function is there for online participants, but that's only to contact the host and the co-hosts if you've got any tech issues, for example. All participants except panelists and moderators will be muted. And very important point, the conference is held on the record and it'll be recorded. If you don't want to appear on the recording, please turn off your camera. Also, we will be taking photos. So if you don't want to be in any photos, please let us know. I think I should also mention that we will have a handheld microphone, by the way, which will go around the room if you have questions to ask. We will be emailing everybody a survey after the conference. It'll only take a couple of minutes to fill in, but we'd be very grateful if you could, because we learn a lot from these for improving future events. Social media, please do tweet or use any other social media channels. Please tag the BEARR Trust. And we will be putting the full conference recording on YouTube in a couple of weeks' time. Final admin thing, and I hope we don't need to use this, but the emergency exit It's through that door. And when you're through it, there are two other emergency exits. You will see signs too, one via the kitchen, one via the entrance. Just so you know, I hope you don't need to use them. Anyway, welcome again. And now over to our panelists. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Michael Russell. I am one of the trustees of the BEARR Trust, and it's my great pleasure to introduce the first panel looking at innovations by small civil society organizations in supporting people in vulnerable situations. Now, it's clearly in crisis times, be it conflict, health, pandemic, political, economic, personal crises, the question of how to support people facing vulnerability and marginalization is becomes especially acute, and how can small organizations respond to needs while equally looking after themselves as organizations. And to speak on this topic, we have three great colleagues. I'll introduce the whole panel at the start so that you understand what's coming up in the next hour. Three speakers coming from three different countries, Tajikistan, Armenia, and Ukraine. First speaker will be Gulrukhsor Abdullaeva, who is currently chair of the leading organization working in the field of domestic abuse in Tajikistan, and also one of the founding organizations and chair of the Association of Crisis Centers in Tajikistan. And Gulrukhsor will be speaking on innovations in responding to the needs of women and children facing violence. Our second speaker is Armen Alaverdyan from Unison in Armenia. Unison is a leading organization promoting the rights of people with disabilities, working in the fields of information, accessibility, humanitarian aid, particularly in response to disabled people displaced during the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict last year, and provision of wheelchairs and supportive devices. Unison is also part of the European Network of Independent Living, so the Pan-European Network for Disability Rights. And the final speaker is Ivan Vostroknutov, who's head of the Kharkiv City Boxing Club. Now, the boxing club in Kharkiv in eastern Ukraine is been innovating for several years now in response to the crises and conflicts faced in eastern Ukraine, providing humanitarian assistance, psychological support, organizing public events, and also working on restoring civil infrastructure. And Ivan will therefore be talking about supporting people living in the frontline crisis conflict area, and also supporting people who've been internally displaced as a result of the conflict. So very different fields of work and different contexts, but I think a lot that we'll learn and gain about thinking of how civil society organizations can innovate even in particularly crisis situations. Each speaker will have about 10 minutes to present their reflections, and then we'll very much welcome conversation, dialogue between the speakers, and please questions from the room and also online. Please do use the Q&A function. So Gulrukhsor, if we can start with you. Gulrukhsor was speaking, I think, in Russian, so you may want to flip your interpretation channel at the bottom of your screen for those of you who are online. So, пожалуйста, Gulrukhsor.
You're welcome. Well, good morning, good afternoon, dear colleagues, dear participants. Dear participants of today's conference, I would like to start by thanking the organizers for giving me this opportunity to speak to you. I'm presenting the charity organization for females in Tajikistan. This is the center which assists women who have suffered from home violence. We work for 28 years. We were formed in 1996. We have a security hotline, confidence life. Our services are 24/7 confidential. And over 28 years, our doors have never closed on the women. We also engage in teaching and learning, propaganda and advertising campaign to change the attitudes towards home violence. More than 3,500 women address us on a weekly basis. So it means that in Tajikistan, the majority of women are vulnerable to home violence. Official statistics speaks about 30% of home violence cases, but this is a much too low statistics. Very often women do not speak about home violence that either her husband or her husband's family is exerting upon her. And I would like to say that our Tajiki women are very tolerant. They have very stretched kind of pain levels. What we try to attain is happy families. But in Tajikistan, we have a very dominating stereotype that a happy family is a family when you're married. But whether you're happily married or what are the conditions you live in, this is of no importance. You have to provide services to your husband's family, to act as a household maid. And this is the stereotype which is being enhanced from year to year. If you are a divorced woman, then you are a disgraced woman. And we need to break these attitudes, because it is wrong to say that it is only a woman who takes all the guilt and fault for such a situation. So we tried to adopt the law on preventing home violence in Tajikistan. This law had to be adopted, and it was adopted in 2013. But we have many centers and shelters who assist women, but they won't be able to turn the tide of the situation, even though the law is there, but it is not operable, because there are problems and issues of social economic character which lead to the surge of home violence. And it seems that all failures in life, men typically bring onto women and children, who are the most vulnerable. So we thought it wise to take this law, but the law itself did not rule out the situation to the better, because the adoption of the law doesn't really change the situation, and you have to work very effectively, very thoroughly to ensure that your society is totally freed from any violence. Social services and shelters in our country are much too few. We also have no funding from the state level. We have just 4 shelters across the whole country. And our population is 10 million plus. We do not have exact statistics of how many women are faced with home violence. And as I mentioned, if a woman seems to have been provoking husband for the home violence effect, then nevertheless, even if she's a victim, she is not treated as such. She's the guilty party. According to statistics, some 97% of overall population and 72% of women believe that they should take in the most tolerable way this home violence to keep the family. So the law has demonstrated how ineffective it is. There are very few court cases, criminal procedure cases that have been emerged after this law was in service, is in effect. Very few people have been even paying the criminal cases fees. But for the Tajik women to remain homeless, to remain alone, to be stripped of communication with her kids, leads to the fact that women choose to be victimized but not leave the family. So home violence typically presents the situation when the woman has no profession, no major. They are not taught or educated to do anything. So even if they call the law enforcement agencies, they have to withdraw their applications to law enforcement agencies the next day because they are understanding that they can't beat against this whole system. So very often women have no choice in taking cognizant decisions about their own future and fate. They have difficulty to find any employment. Since they have no education, it is very often that women cannot get proper job stations and respective wages. So in the law that we adopted, the emphasis is on prevention of home violence, and there is no criminal responsibility established by the law for any home violence. So in order for a woman to file a criminal case against the perpetrator of home violence, she has to give evidence. And very often women cannot do that. So if this is not the case, when there is no evidence, then hence there is no criminal case against the perpetrator. So as I mentioned, women tolerate home violence for many years. They don't apply to law enforcement agencies or to civil society. Moreover, the crisis management centers and assistance units are often located in municipal areas and not in remote villages. As I mentioned, women have no economic foundation to resist home violence to those who abuse them. You see, the whole husband is the sole place where this woman can remain, and their own parents don't want to assist women if they leave their husbands and take their kids away because they don't want to be stigmatized. So the outcome is of a very sad picture when the woman tolerates home violence and has nowhere to go. This woman has no stable economic foundation, and she remains within the frame of home violence. And she cannot even call any lawyer to explain and somehow resolve a conflict situation. I would like to speak briefly about the achievements that we in our center attained. First and foremost, we need to start with long-term projects lasting for 3 to 5 years because only they give some tangible results. The short-term projects of 6 months are much too short to bring any fruit. The second proposal of mine is perhaps the one calling on all the grassroots civil organizations appealing to international agencies, because it is only international and national civic organizations can assist us. If we want to reverse the situation with home violence in Tajikistan, we need to start with grassroots levels. We need to cooperate with civil society organizations which are trusted by locals so that we can work in the more effective way with them. So here, disbursing services is of greatest importance. In particular, these is crisis management centers, because it is important to ensure that services are disbursed. Because prevention violence, only prevention violence is just a waste of time and effort. If we disburse tangible services, it means in reality that we prevent violence. And if abusers know that women can find assistance, there are places they can apply to, they have support and shelter, then the cases of abuse and violence will go down dramatically. At the same time, if we do not disburse enough services, it means that we lose contact with real situations of real women. We need to give a broader picture to the civil society, not only gender-based civil society, because this could lead us to a much too limited standpoint and viewpoint of what is happening. We need to ensure that we are working according to the earmarked and targeted levels, and at the same time providing the bird's eye view so that women know whom to apply.
Come in and ask, maybe just so that we have enough time for discussion later, could you maybe if you have some finishing remarks about the innovations that I know your organization is doing, maybe just 1 more minute, and then we'll have time for discussion for people to ask questions.
Okay, thank you. Speaking about our innovations, we would like to recommend a new approach for widening, for expanding economic ways and possibilities to women, that women are more free to act and that women are different in our society. We are not all similar. We not all have no education or whatever. We know basic things that we do. So when I speak about expanding economic possibilities for women, I mean something as following. One needs to consider woman as a person, as a persona, as an individual. That a woman is entitled to decide for herself how she wishes to lead her economic life, whether she wants to go into education, whether she wants to go into work. And women should bear responsibility for their decisions. So online business accelerators play a very important role here. We have Islamic banking, which gives zero interest loans to vulnerable groups of citizens. And this is important to expand economic opportunities for such people so that people get relevant information about such opportunities. And women who want to change their lifestyle and their dependencies in our Center Gulrukhsor, we work with men as well. We work with family members of the victim who applied to us. And our team has an expansive experience of family consultations. The most interesting thing that we have managed to attain is that we assist women to change their lifestyle. Within their families, we give them psychological assistance to make sure that women are self-educated and self-evaluated so that the woman can understand her situation, her traumas, and what she wants to achieve in life. We try to assist women to enhance their own standards. As I mentioned earlier, it was impossible for any woman who is married and is the victim of home violence to leave this family. So by these family consultations, we give confidence to women that it is not only their family that they depend on. So there are many innovations, so I will not be able to give you all. I have provided a lot of material, and I believe that during the question-answer session, I can give a more detailed answer. I would like just to conclude. Thank you for the opportunity once again. I shall be online until the end of this conference. Thank you very much.
So really informative, and I think your message about allowing the women you work with to actually be involved in decisions and developing support is certainly one of the key messages about innovation that we take. So now we move from Tajikistan to Armenia, where Armen from Unison will talk about innovations to support people with disabilities in different crisis contexts. So great to welcome you, Armen.
Thank you, Michael. Hello, everybody. My name is Armen. I'm head of Unison NGO, and also until last year, I was the board member of European Network on Independent Living in NIL. And Unison was created 22 years ago, and our usual activities are to promote the rights of people with disabilities, inclusion in culture, education, legal advice, psychological aid, creating employment opportunities to disabled people. We managed to place to jobs about 660 disabled people. And I would like to stress that this is not a sheltered employment, it's just a normal employment in just ordinary companies, both government-owned and private companies. We are very active in promoting accessibility, and we made big progress in the capital city of Armenia, in Yerevan, unfortunately not in rural areas, but in Yerevan, I was the sole representative of disability community in the Yerevan transportation reform, commission reform at the municipality. So the commission on reforms was led by the mayor of Yerevan, and our advisor was a British expert, by the way. And my only duty was to promote accessibility, because I am not expert in transportation, in buses, trolleybuses, metro, etc. So my only demand was to make all of the new buses or whatever accessible. And after long negotiations, there were proposals to make 20% or 50% of new equipment accessible. I explained that I don't know any percent except for 100%. And I succeeded in it. And now all of the new buses in Yerevan and trolleybuses are accessible. And this process is ongoing. And similarly, in streets and parks of the capital city have much improved the accessibility. Though we have lots of work to do. And we always use some innovative methods to achieve our goals. Like flash mobs, unexpected some actions. We did many biannual beauty contest for disabled ladies, which was a real challenge at the beginning, and other innovative methods. And as my colleague from Tajikistan said, we also had good legislation, very nice laws, but poor implementation. For example, the Accessibility Act and accessibility norms were adopted in 2007. But till now, it is up to us, to the civil society, to fight for real accessibility. This and also Armenia is part of CRPD, the Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and its optional protocol. But again, it's very nice on paper and not the case in the reality, unfortunately. So our role is very important to promote all of this, to make them work. And now I will share some of our approaches during crisis times. So the first is COVID-19 pandemic. And of course, it was a shock, a global shock, not only for Armenia. And how did we try to respond? Of course, we distributed face masks, gloves, and other items. But what we understood and what was innovatory from our part, that the most important challenge is lack of awareness. People with disabilities did not know how to protect themselves during pandemic. For example, wheelchair users did not know how to make their wheelchair safe. People with hard of hearing people did not know how can they communicate if their and others' faces are covered by face masks, etc. There are lots of examples, and we understood that in addition to providing humanitarian aid and items, we should provide information. So what we did, we urgently collected all of the best practices from World Health Organization, from leading disability organizations and other organizations, global interests. We translated all of this into Armenian, and we actively share this information through social media, through our website, and in other methods. Also, we have a good group, world-renowned Parish Chamber Choir. It's an award-winning inclusive choir, chorus. And of course, during the pandemic, it was prohibited to gather, but we did not want to suspend our activities, so we found a way to do it online. We did rehearsals online. By the way, our conductor was stuck in the United States of America. We're here in Armenia, and all of us were in front of our computers, and we were making rehearsals, and we even produced several videos. It was a new experience, but it was really important to show people that life continues and the pandemic will be over, and we should be continue our usual activities. And also we were able, when thousands of people lost their jobs due to pandemics, we were able to place to job a dozen of disabled people during the pandemic times. And it was also a good message to the society. And then came the first terrible September for Armenia. It was 2020, the year of 2020, when Azerbaijan started aggression against the people of Nagorno-Karabakh, supported by Turkey, and we were alone. We had no supporters globally, unfortunately, and it was time of deaths and wounded people, thousands of wounded young men, mostly men, but also civilians, both men and women, came to Armenia, and it was a situation was chaotic. The government could not deal with their issues, and again, the civil society and Unison tried to do our best to provide wheelchairs, other assistive devices, but also, again, the most important thing was information. People did not know where to apply for their disability status or for their rehabilitation treatment or for items they need. And we organized our information center, and we shared this information with all of the people affected, as far as our limited resources allowed, of course. Then in 2023 came the second terrible, maybe most terrible September for Armenia, because there was again aggression against Nagorno-Karabakh. People and Armenians were forced to move. There was an ethnic cleansing, which is recognized by International Genocide Institute and other bodies. But again, people and the important institutions recognize this, but doesn't do, unfortunately, anything to restore the rights of displaced people. So over 100,000 people, Armenians, were forcibly displaced from Nagorno-Karabakh to Armenia. Among them, 9,000 had disabilities. Still, government failed to effectively support these people, and we organized humanitarian action. We organized fundraisers. We distributed assistive devices, hygienic items, but not only. There were cases when, for example, a girl who could not walk, so she was a wheelchair user, did not have a bed to sleep on, so she had to sleep on floor. So in these cases, we were able to support them with items they needed. And again, again, information, lack of information, lack of awareness was one of the most challenging issues. Just imagine 9,000 people with disabilities do not know how to get any assistance, how to get temporary shelters, where to live, how to get clothes, how to get a wheelchair, because they did not manage to bring their wheelchairs from Nagorno-Karabakh. They had no choice. They wanted to save their lives, not their belongings. They lost everything. And and now again, with some innovative methods, with usage of different social media and active promotion of the rights of displaced people, we were able to relieve their situation. Of course, now I will try to keep my 10 minutes. I think I have one or two. Yeah.
I think you actually have just gone over a little bit. So maybe if you have one final message.
Okay, I will conclude with it. Now the most urgent issue for Armenia is to stop immigration from the country. And there is a huge percentage of disabled people, especially displaced from Nagorno-Karabakh, who are immigrating because they don't see future here. So our urgent goal is to show their future, to show them, to persuade them that there is life here in Armenia, and there will be a better situation and better, and we stand with them. And so to conclude, thanks again to BEARR Trust for this opportunity and for supporting us, our activities. Thank you for your attention.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Armen. Very interesting, and we can already see some parallels with what Gulrukhsor said in her presentation. So we move geographical location again to Kharkiv in eastern Ukraine, where Ivan Vostroknutov will talk about the work of the charity foundation Kyiv City Boxing Club and the support that they have very quickly had to introduce for many people from the region and displaced So Ivan, welcome.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a very, very big pleasure, and we are so grateful to the BEARR Trust, our beloved partners and organizers of this wonderful event, to let us speak about the situation, the humanitarian situation in Eastern Ukraine, and to let the community know what is happening and what do the vulnerable people need. As the name of first panel says, we are going to talk about people with facing vulnerabilities and marginalization, and people who live in the frontline areas and who are IDPs cause of hostilities in their homeland are those who face both vulnerabilities and marginalization. I'm going now just to to notice some points. What do these people need? We can talk a lot about what do we try to do, with big thanks to the BEARR Trust, because we are partners for more than 2 years and we did a lot of great projects together. But I just want to tell you and to tell the community the things that people need. First of all, let's talk about those who are now vulnerable because of hostilities. They are people from Ukraine who were quite modern society before the war, with high-speed internet connection, with a lot of online bankings, online stores, and so on. So these people were totally the people of 21st century, and now everything's gone. They have no electricity, no heating, sometimes no gas in their houses cause of ongoing full-scale conflict. That's why the situation for them is even worse than for those who lived, in some not so modern communities. So talking about those who live in frontline areas, first of all, they are permanently under shelling with bombs, with mines, and under huge danger. It affects their physical conditions and their mental conditions. After that, in the territory where they live, all the infrastructure is damaged. The infrastructure is damaged, and the conditions are awful. That leads to huge problems with food security and with hygiene situation. So they firstly they need to stay safe, and after that they need a first scale assistance with food and hygiene. After that, it's necessary not to forget about the problems of mental health that are caused by living in frontline areas. It's necessary to help those people, to help them to return to normal life, or conditions that can be named normal life, because they are very damaged by the war and they will never forget it. And it's the problem because of hostilities, because of the global situation in the eastern part of Ukraine. Sometimes there is no possibility just to deliver first necessary kits to them. It can be a big problem to deliver hygiene, to deliver food. But however, local organizations, I'll tell you some words, local organizations with the help of international partners like the BEARR Trust do this very, very important mission to help the civilians. Locals coordinate with each other and with international partners through humanitarian clusters, coordinating with UN agencies, talking to local authorities. Why do the locals do it? Because it's necessary to try to help as much vulnerable people as it is possible. So it's necessary to identify the needs, to help firstly those who is most vulnerable, to avoid any duplications, to check all the parts of humanitarian work, because resources are not unlimited and we have to help people as much as we can. It's some words about people living in the frontline areas. Then I just want to tell you something about IDPs. Internally displaced people face lots of troubles after displacement from their home cities, hometowns, home villages, because they firstly stay in shelters. These shelters are not always made for being habitat for lots of people, for hundreds of people in one shelter. Usually it's an old school or an old gym or something like that. Yeah, with cold water, with some, you know, technical rooms, but with no conditions for living in winter, in autumn, or even in a hot period of summer. That's why the priorities in helping those people are a bit changed. They still need assistance in hygiene, kits, and food, but different types. Usually shelters are located in less or more safe places, cities, villages, towns. They have shops, they have access to some you know, electricity, heating, and so on, but they are still vulnerable because they do not know what to do. They have no jobs, they have no money to help their families or themselves. That's why the NGOs working in this sector need to a bit change the focus of view. Like some examples. If we work with frontline territories, it's the best way to give them food boxes. But people living in shelters in cities, so IDPs, they more need food vouchers because it also provides them food, but it's easier for people that are in shelters to get that food that they need, and for local NGOs not to overspend the human resources providing food boxes where the vulnerable people can buy themselves something using vouchers. Also, similar things with providing like after autonomic electricity, hygiene, and you know, other types of first scale assistance. Well, talking about some more points, like let me check my notes. Talking about basic needs of these people, just some words. They are almost the same: food security, hygiene security, psychological support, restoring and repairing of buildings like houses and like some buildings for the community like collective centers and so on, and also medical care. There are different ways to help people in this situation, from mobile clinics, medical mobile clinics, mobile psychological assistance that we provided with the BEARR Trust. Thank you, dear partners. Then convoys with food and with hygiene. And all of this type of assistance are extremely needed in frontline territories because you know the conditions. The full-scale conflict is ongoing, and nobody knows when will it stop. And yeah, after that, it will be necessary to think how to restore the society, and our NGO is already thinking about it. We are working in that field, performing some, you know, long-term results, projects with long-term results, helping community to increase the social cohesion, to restore the mental health of people. But while the war is ongoing, it's necessary not to forget that yeah, we can think about long-term projects, but if the people are in permanent danger, so it's necessary to help them with the things that they need today and now and in the place that they stay. Well, talking about the future, 2025 will be there in 1 month, and the situation is still very hard because year by year resources are smaller and smaller, but the number of vulnerable people is bigger. Make some joint projects to help the people that are extremely in need, and just thanks to cooperation and to coordination between NGOs, we can help the vulnerable people to survive, and then we can heal the society. That's, I think, the strategy not just to heal Ukraine, but to help all the world, because if the society in the country is unhealthy, the people go out of this country and enter other countries, enter other parts of the world, being marginalized and enlarging the number of unhealthy society elements. But we do not want the people, we do not want Ukrainians to be such parts. We want the society to be healthy and lucky. And thanks to our dear partners from the BEARR Trust, we can do our part in this very, very necessary job. Thank you, dear partners.
Wonderful. Ivan, thank you so much for sharing very openly and very clearly the how your organization is working to support people. So, colleagues, we've had an excellent 3 speakers covering 3 very different issues. We encourage you to ask questions now. We have about maximum 15 minutes, so we could take 2 or 3 questions from the room. And also online, please do use the question and answer function. I unfortunately have to be the one reading out questions for you. I can maybe go directly straight into one that we received from Jerry Nasovska, who would like to, is asking if it's possible to involve people who receive your services, so people who use your services. Are they ever involved in designing the interventions, designing the support that you give? So maybe we can go through all speakers. It's a great question.
I can start if you don't mind.
Yes, please, Armen. Yeah.
People with disabilities are part of our design process always, especially in the crisis times. About half of Unison staff, permanent staff, are people with disabilities. Also, when we are starting an initiative, we'll do like a survey or a meeting or focus groups or different methods to know the opinions, to collect the opinions of our beneficiaries, of people with disabilities, and to make the best choice for the project or initiative.
Brilliant. Thank you. Very interesting. Gulrukhsor, would you like to speak? Just need you to unmute yourself.
Окей.
Yeah.
Да,
Да.
можно еще раз вопрос, пожалуйста?
Could you please repeat the question? We have a very poor internet connection, so our internet is not a broadband one, so I do apologize.
The question is, how are the women that you work with involved in designing the support that they receive?
Indeed, we are liaised with these women, we cooperate with them, and we try to engage them. Just a second, my internet is slow. Speaking about innovations that I was not ready to share with you because of time frame. For example, we had housing committees on prevention of home violence. So this is the liaison chain with whom we will connect. I do apologize for the internet connection. I'm just catching half of the words that I hear. So perhaps I should write better so that you can see my full answer.
Very well. So just to say that you are coming through to us very well. Ivan, can I pose the question to you? Has there been a chance to involve people in saying what would be useful and how it should be delivered?
For sure, thank you for the question. Well, talking about our activities, first of all, while we doing an assessment and identifying the needs, we coordinate and we bring the information also from the locals, not just local authorities, but local people who are our beneficiaries. Also, in some types of projects, we hire people from the local communities for some working period, for some tasks, like the employees of our NGO. It helps us to increase the quality because they know the situation in the field, and it's very, very, very good for us and also for them because they get also the job. And also some employees of our permanent staff, before they became our workers, our employees, they were beneficiaries. They just were interested in our activities and then joined our team. That's why, yeah, in all the stages of our work, we include the coordination with potential or like coordination with beneficiaries. Thank you for your question.
Yeah, many thanks. Ivan, there is one more question that has been filtered to me online from Rosemary Thomas. Whether your organization has started to think about challenges or work planning for resettling Ukrainians who moved abroad and who will move back to Ukraine. Whether have you been able to think beyond crisis to longer term resettlement?
Yeah, for sure. It's very, very hard question for us because it's the problem that needs a big work on fixing it. The situation is that according to the statistic, the people who were going out of Ukraine became, not citizen but living in other countries and not wanting to return to Ukraine are mostly people from lower class, because those who have had nice jobs, businesses, and so on in Ukraine, they come to other countries like displaced people, externally displaced people, and they have not so big earnings in there. Yeah, they get something from government, some assistance, but they still want to return to Ukraine after the war and live there and work there. But the people who had nothing in Ukraine, they think, well, I have nothing there, I have nothing in other country, but in my country there is a war. It's necessary to coordinate with government, to coordinate with businesses and with big NGOs to offer people from Ukraine the possibilities to build their future. That's the thing. How can we fix this problem, and how can we help them to involve them, encourage them to return? It's not so easy because it needs lots of strategic planning and lots of finance. But however, we already started coordinating even with some ministries in Ukraine to set up a plan and to start returning people. And we already got some cases, where we are boxing clubs. That's why we are a bit strong in field of boxing, and we have returned some young sportsmen to Ukraine, offering them future in a field of boxing or boxing management. It helped us, so we already have some cases of returning of young people that can create the future there. That's why, we think that it's necessary to continue working in this field. Thank you for the question.
Wonderful, thank you. And I think this theme about economic opportunities, financial opportunities has come through all three presentations as being a key thing that needs to be considered, and also I guess adapting to lived realities of people that's being supported. Can I just check in the room in London? Are there any hands up or questions at the moment? I see not. So then we can go to one online question that's come from Megan Bick.
Michael, sorry, there's one question from Stephen. There is a question from the room.
Okay, then please Let's take it.
Sorry, we just need this ready.
First of all, thank you to speakers for their presentation. I'm looking at it from a British point of view, and particularly this is addressed to Gulrukhsor and Armen. In Britain, over say the last 50 years, we have made some significant progress in the field of domestic violence against women, and also helping people with disabilities. We've made some significant progress. I wouldn't say we are all the way there. I think there's still a lot to do. But does that sort of foreign experience help you at all? Can you quote it and you say, look, this is what's done in other countries? I'm taking Britain as an example. Why can't we do that in our country? Does that help?
Thank you.
Can I? May I, Michael?
Yes, please, Armen. Please start off.
Yeah, of course. As I said, that as being a member of ENIL, European Network on Independent Living, means that we share our experience, and we took their experience, the experience of leading countries, richer countries and more successful in the protection of the disabled people's rights. And also we raised some issues. For example, Brussels is the capital of European Union, right? Place which hosts European Commission, etc. But Brussels is very far from being ideal from the point of view of accessibility. Surprisingly, for me, it was a surprise for the first time when I was visiting Brussels. So yeah, we do share our experiences. We do share best practices and the methods of, and we accept methods of those European countries who really reached the best in terms of accessibility. Yeah, it is very, very useful.
Hi, Michael.
Yes, please.
This is Vicky Fletcher. I think I would like to reply on behalf of Women's Centre Gulrukhsor, who's maybe in quite a special place because I'm a British woman who's lived in Khujand for the last 5 years, and I work as a full-time volunteer for Women's Centre Gulrukhsor. So it's very interesting to have a question that compares British violence against women and violence against women in Tajikistan. First of all, I think we should remember a little bit about the UK, that first of all, 1 woman a week is killed in the UK as a result of femicide. The rates of femicide, for example, in Canada and the UK would be higher than the rates of femicide in Tajikistan. But saying that, the levels of domestic violence in general are much higher in Tajikistan. In terms of sharing international experience, yes, it's very important. For example, one thing that the UK does very well is the domestic homicide reviews. So every time that there is a case of a murder of a woman in the UK, it's not just the police deciding who murdered her and following the court situation. It's a case of looking at the full agency. How did that all work together? Why did that woman die? Why was that woman particularly at risk? And why was this man particularly of risk? And in the UK, we have very great expertise from Professor Jane Monckton-Smith at the University of Gloucester, who has written a book on the 8 steps to homicide that talks about how can you identify that? How can you learn from that? Also, the UK funds a huge international programme of £250 million a year of what works to prevent violence against women. And this takes a scientific approach across the whole world that says, rather than just guessing what would be nice to do to prevent violence against women, actually what does work? How do we prove that scientifically? And the UN Trust Fund also has a very detailed approach to saying actually what does work. And at Centre Gulrukhsor in Tajikistan, we take those international best practice and put them into work. So one of the questions earlier was about using participatory approaches to work out what do you actually need to do. What we talked about, Gulrukhsor talked in her speech, is about really being in contact with your communities to really understand what are the real problems, what is happening in real life. And so, well, rather than just taking in the UK, we have quite a different family setup. You know, Gulrukhsor mentioned it in her speech that everyone wants to have a happy family, but in Tajikistan, there's a very rigid definition of what is that happy family. In the UK, we don't have to live with our mothers and fathers generally. We generally don't have to care for elderly people who need full-time caring, for example. That's a very large strain on a lot of families in Tajikistan. We don't have to live with our brothers and sisters and their families and their children. And in multi-generation and multi-family households, that does put an extra layer of pressure on that a large percentage of people in the UK are not exposed to. So just in summary, let's take not just learning from the UK, where we are leading in some of the main things, but let's take learning from around the world. Let's take a scientific approach. Let's share experiences. And then by doing that, we can really make sure that we're spending money where it actually works and rather on things that might just look nice, but don't actually deliver results.
Thank you very much, Vicky, and also for highlighting the international experience still needs to be applied in local contexts that might be very different to, for example, the UK. Ivan, would you like any to reflect on the value of UK experience or international experience in your work, if it's ever been useful or not useful?
For sure, thank you for an opportunity. The situation is that our strategy is to deliver best type of assistance. That's why we have to study permanently. We study from the experience of other countries, including UK, in similar situations. Yeah, the situation is the situation in Ukraine is quite unusual because it's the first such a big war in territory of Europe since World War II ended. But however, there were some conflicts, and we study how do they affect on society, what type of assistance do the people need, and well, how to heal the society after it. But nevertheless, it's not necessary just to do what is written on a paper from some reviews, from some studies from abroad, because to be honest, the situation in Ukraine sometimes is complicated by the rules given by NGOs, international actors, that just follow programs like that were set up in Africa and trying to implement these programs in Ukraine. We have had some cases when we were very, very young, and we made an assessment for a big international NGO asking us to collect the informations. Do the people have leak of water or some problems with heavy sun heating, with high temperature? And we collected this information at the very, very beginning of spring in Ukraine, when people were just asking, why are you asking these types of questions? Also, there were some cases, I know that some workers of UN agencies came to Lviv, taking with them some medicines for clearing the water, some bird toilet, and something else, because they were really thinking that Ukraine is some type of, medieval country with huge problems. But the situation is not so usual. It's unusual because the war entered a bit a modern country, not 100% modern, but the country of 21st century. That's why, yeah, we use the practices and the knowledge given us from other countries and from international partners, but it's necessary to think anytime, what do we provide, and is it really necessary? Thank you for the question.
That's a really strong message to finish the panel with about the importance of local needs, local definitions of support, and local control over the processes. Unfortunately, there are two excellent questions in the online chat. One was asking about how larger international donors could actually work better with small local groups like your three organizations. There was a second question about the extent to which the mass media help to promote awareness of the challenges faced by the groups that you look to support. Unfortunately, we don't have time in this panel to consider those questions, but I'm sure they'll come up either in the next panel, which actually looks at civil society impact, or in the final discussion at the end of the conference. So we need to say a big thank you to Gulrukhsor, to Armen, to Ivan, to the people who set questions. It's been a fantastic opening panel to understand, I mean, the brilliant work that you're doing in a range of frontline situations to address marginalization and vulnerability. Thank you for your work. Thank you to the audience. We will meet back in 10 minutes. Please try to keep that sharp, both online and in the room in London, so that we don't delay too much. So for London, it'll be 11:25 starting back. For those of you online in 10 minutes time, I hope that's enough for coffee break and refreshments. It was lovely to work with you, and see you in 10 minutes time.
Welcome back into the room and welcome everyone who is online. My name is Claire Brooks. I'm a trustee of the BEARR Trust, and I'm delighted to chair this panel on strategies to maximize civil society impact. And this is where we're going to hear some stories from 3 speakers who are going to touch on a number of themes, amongst which we have localization and local capacity building, and that was touched on in the previous panel, organizational resilience, and skills building and partnership working. And these are all strategies to help civil society organizations better serve their communities. We have 1 hour for this panel. Each panelist will talk for about 10 minutes. Our first speaker, we're going to go to Ukraine, is Daria Rybalchenko from the National Network for Local Philanthropy Development. Daria is speaking first because she has another commitment this morning. Our second speaker is also from Ukraine, from the southern part, and that is Irina Los from the Open Doors in Nikopol. And then we go to Kyrgyzstan, where our final speaker is Mirim Osmonolaveva. Now, because Daria can only be with us a short time, she'll speak and then we'll take some questions from her. Otherwise, we will take questions for Irina and Mirim at the very end of the session. So, let me introduce Daria. We've just heard Yerevan give a really vivid description of what it's like to be an IDP. Daria was born in Luhansk in eastern Ukraine and has twice been made an IDP, an internally displaced person. Firstly in 2014 and then again in 2022. She is a graduate from Kharkiv Polytechnic University with a degree in heat and power engineering, and she's participated in a number of leadership programs, including the Leadership Lab of the German Marshall Fund of the United States. She is now director of the National Network of Local Philanthropy Development, which involves a network of 15 community foundations, alongside being a philanthropy researcher and localization consultant. Daria, a big warm welcome to you, and thank you for being with us today. And now over to you.
Вітаю, дуже дякую. Я сподіваюся, що мене добре чути перекладачам. Я буду говорити українською
I
мовою.
hope that the interpreters hear me well. I will be speaking in Ukrainian.
Вас видно, правда?
I have a brief presentation for you. Can you hear? Can you see it? Can you see it?
Дякую.
Yes.
Так, назва організації Національна мережа розвитку.
So the organization is called National Network of Local Philanthropy Development, and we unite 15 funds of local communities. We develop social capital and philanthropy for steady and sustainable development of communities. I will try to show you very briefly the history of community foundations. This is a long story. It started in 1914 in the US, and then it came to Ukraine as a sustainable form of work, even even though we had the first similar organizations earlier. Basically, now we have 15 foundations which are part of a large-scale international network. So what is a community foundation? In Ukraine, this is a model of work for an organization in international environment. And so we view this basically as a model which can be implemented by NGOs. And in each country, there are slight differences between them. In Ukraine, community foundation is clearly linked with the territories. It is totally unbiased and neutral in terms of politics. It is totally transparent. It accumulates resources at the local level, supports local initiatives, and is run by a large-scale community of representatives of the local community. What is a community foundation in modern Ukraine? This is an organization which accumulates international and local resources to deal with the challenges of war, the challenges of the pandemic which we faced during the COVID period. And they serve as a transparent intermediate link between those who have physical resources and those who have human capital, physical capital being money and other resources which can be given to people. And the human resources is about those who can implement projects, activists, initiative groups, and so on. During the war, community foundations did a lot to unite different links of work related to IDPs in communication with local populations and state institutions and the private sector. Community foundations cultivates a philanthropy culture through supporting local talents and local resources. We cooperate with them in the following manner. We provide them with various services and develop those organizations as much as we can by financing, by empowering them through advocacy services, communications. When in 2022, a full-scale war started, we had our own way to advocacy and localization. We understood that community foundations work with local resources primarily. Some 70% to 80% of resources were local, and they were donated by businesses or individuals. And after the start of the full-scale war, many people started donating their resources to the armed forces. And therefore, some of the resources which were provided for local foundations stopped being provided. So we started cooperating with international donors more actively and with international organizations. But we understood that something is not going right. We know how to work with grants. We know how to develop our communities. We know what kind of needs our communities have. But when we speak to donors, there's no rapport between us because they sometimes don't trust us. They listen to us, but they don't hear us, even though we have had quite a long experience of cooperating with them. But sometimes donors are new and they know very little about us. In 2022, a very symbolic thing happened to me. That was the day before the day of independence of Ukraine. That happened in Vostroknutov, which is one of our centers. There was severe shelling there, and more than 100 houses were destroyed. We phoned our colleagues there. They said that they're safe, but there's a huge need for reconstruction, for construction, for repairing, for fixing, because that was the end of summer and autumn was approaching and people required assistance badly. So I started talking to different international organizations, those who had some temporary repair kits and other materials. So I told them that I have all the documents at hand to apply to you with a request to give us those materials. And they said, we can't do it because we need to go to your place and inspect it. And we cannot go there because there's shooting going on there. And 1 month later, they called me back and they said, do you still have a problem? And with that, I ended cooperating with that organization once and for all. As a result, in September 2022, we sent an open letter entitled If Not Now, Then When, which called upon international organizations to help us in this time of need. We started cooperating with all kinds of advocacy organizations. We ran numerous events, and in 2023 we became co-founders of the Alliance of Ukrainian Organizations of Civil Society, which combined 16 organizations to strengthen our voice for advocacy. Why is it so important for Ukrainian organizations to take part in coordination and advocacy for localization? It might seem like this is something which might ruin our unstable relations with the donors, that it can make a bad impact on our reputation. But in fact, this is something which demonstrates your leadership potential. It helps us show that we have sustainability and ability to use your resources that you're going to donate. You learn much more when you coordinate with other organizations around one cause or another. There's a research which was published this year which shows that Ukrainian organizations by 15.5% are more efficient in the use of resources than international similar organizations. I can provide that information. But basically it shows that if you donate money and resources to Ukrainian organizations, the use of that resource will be considerably higher, because you know the actual needs and requirements of your community. So my message to you is, don't be afraid to advocate for your position. You can start right away. This year we launched the second open letter, which is entitled Solidarity of Action. So this work is going on, but much slower, much more slowly than the rate of war, which is still raging on in Ukraine. You can see 4 major points of appeal in this letter. The QR code will lead you to this letter, and if it strikes a chord with you, you can sign this letter. Another thing you can do right away is to subscribe to the site and the website of the Alliance of Ukrainian Civil Society Organizations, and to join membership in this organization. Membership is free of charge, but you will be able to tell us about your community and share your expertise. The most important thing is that you should be ready for the implementation of the strategy of local leadership in humanitarian advocacy. That's all from me. Should you want to subscribe to our website, here are the QR codes, and I stand ready to take your questions. Thank you.
Daria, thank you very much indeed. I'm always amazed in terms of the organizations that BEARR is able to support, the civil society organizations, how much they do really on very modest means. So your message about the value of community foundations and their support for civil society organizations is very well received. If I could just start with one question, you mentioned 15 community foundations. Could you tell me a bit more how much of Ukraine they cover? Are they available everywhere, or are there some gaps and what your hopes are for full coverage of the country?
Наша велика мрія, щоб в кожній громаді територіальній одиниці
Our dream is that each territorial community should have its own community foundation. Currently, we cover 15 organizations, and they cover all the territory of Ukraine. We have one in Kharkiv, in Kramatorsk, in the west of Ukraine, in Lviv, in Kherson, and Vostroknutov in the south of Ukraine, and in Kyiv region. So basically, we are covering the entire territory of Ukraine. Regionally, we have representatives all across Ukraine. We are developing this network. This year, we had a training school for community foundations, and we continue our work to make sure that more organizations get to know about this model of work and to try it out for themselves, and to answer the question whether they want to incorporate within our structure, and we hope that they will join.
Wonderful, thank you. I understand we have a question which I can't actually see. Where is it?
Oh, it's from Ivan. Here we are. Here it is.
So Ivan is asking, do you have problems with relationships with international NGOs? Do you work with coordination structures like the UNOCHA or clusters? I don't know what clusters are, but they're in Ukraine. All the INGOs trust them and ask them for verification of local NGOs.
We do cooperate with those organizations. We, as an international, as humanitarian organization, we do not deal with the distribution of humanitarian aid because our members do it individually at the local level. For instance, in Kramatorsk city, and they basically, we have come to the point when we understand whom we would like to work with and whom we would not like to cooperate with. If our values converge, if we're talking about our organizations and similar international institutions. This is probably one of the changes at the level of leadership which has happened when not just international organizations take a pick with whom they want to cooperate, but the Ukrainian ones also are selective about whom they want to cooperate. And I believe that donors should also pay attention to the fact whether local organizations cooperate with one organization or another, if they have credibility or not. We have a format of events which we run on a regular basis. The meeting is called Meetings for Change, where we gather donors, organizations, international partners, and so on, within which we try to find common points for cooperation. Next year, we'll have another 2 meetings of this kind, and information about that can be found at our website. Shortly, we'll have a registration for the northern and western regions.
Thank you. Could I just check if there's, Daria, do you have time for one quick question more? Is there anyone? A question? No? Thank you very much, Daria. Thank you, and good luck with the rest of your day. I know it's a busy one for you. Thank you. All right. Let me now introduce second speaker, Irina Los from Open Doors in Nikopol, a center which has provided humanitarian, legal assistance and psychological support to vulnerable groups of the population. A warm welcome back, Irina. I understand you participated in our 2022 conference. Thank you. Irina is a lawyer who's led over 60 human rights projects and initiatives to improve the lives of vulnerable people. She is a monitor of the National Preventative Mechanism, which aims to counteract torture and ill treatment in places of unfreedom, such as residential care facilities, prisons, and geriatric homes. She also holds an expert position with the OSCE project Promotion of the Human Dimension of Security in Ukraine, which also works to address the country's human rights situation. Alongside her work with Open Doors, she is currently head for the region of Ukraine Without Torture and is a member of the Citizens Council at Nikopol City Council. And Irina, we're delighted you're with us, and we understand that you're going to talk to us about organizational resilience and mental health. Over to you.
Так, доброго дня, шановні учасники конференції. Мене чутно?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Can you hear me?
Дякую. Я всіх вас вітаю.
Okay.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Дякую вам за можливість виступити сьогодні.
Greetings to you all. Thank you for the opportunity to speak at today's conference. I represent Open Doors organization, which has been working since 2005 and provides legal and other assistances to vulnerable straight population. We also draft reports and document war crimes. But today I would like to focus on the programs which were supported by BEARR Trust. To better explain what we do, I'd like to describe the realities facing our people today and to tell you about the harrowing everyday problems of the community living in the city of Nikopol. We used to think that COVID was a challenge for us, but then war came, and from July 2022, the Nikopol territorial community has a status of the territory of active armed activities or hostilities, and every night it sustains shellings from the Russian military with the use of strike drones, Grad multiple launch rocket systems, and heavy shellings. Even now, Nikopol is being shelled from heavy artillery. Our local community lives some 4 to 5 kilometers to the area of hostilities near the Kakhovka Dam, which was blown up by Russians. The infrastructure of the city keeps being affected all the time. People suffer from FPV drones. People are being hunted like during safari hunting. Russians shoot at civilians living across the river from the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. Unfortunately, since the beginning of the hostilities, as of July 2024, 65 civilian residents of Nikopol had been killed. Another 84 were wounded. The mortality rate of deaths from strokes and heart attacks has increased considerably. More than 550 multi-storied buildings have been destroyed or damaged. The facilities of culture and everyday amenities and utilities have been badly ruined. More than 50% of residents had to leave their homes and settle down in safer places. The blowing up of the Kakhovka dam was especially dangerous because the city ended up without a water supply, because the Kakhovka reservoir basically was drained and it was used for the water supply of the locals. In spite of all that, more than about 50% of residents live on in Nikopol. People are very wary for their life, for their future. They sustain losses, they are bereaved, and against this backdrop, NGOs helping people are on the verge of exhaustion, but nevertheless they continue helping people. They are on the verge of emotional burnout because they put their lives online day in and day out. That is why in the pre-frontline areas, psychological support and recuperation of volunteers is a big necessity. We do this with the help of Trust Foundation. We managed to gather activists from the city of Nikopol. We gathered them in the Carpathian Mountains. And it was not just a trip to the mountain area. There was a time for people to recharge, to unwind, to recharge their batteries, as it were, and to plan our activities for the future. Among the key tasks, there is a continuation of humanitarian assistance for local area near Nikopol, including legal and other kinds of support. The members of this problem managed to enjoy the scenic landscapes of the Carpathian Mountains. Self-assistance group have been operating in Nikopol since September 2024, and this was done also with the help of BEARR Trust. People use this program to restore their resilience. And this is extremely important for us and for our volunteers and for local residents. For 3 to 4 months of our work, we managed to create a space in which everyone can get assistance and support. People can quickly analyze the realities in which they live, to change their attitude to the current problems. They can focus on their flexibility, management of their emotions and sustainability, focusing on our mental health. We've engaged an experienced psychologist for that work. Her considerable knowledge and expertise helped us ensure high efficiency of our training sessions. And we are sure that this kind of support is absolutely key, not just for residents of Nikopol, but also for our activists who do so much to help people. The exchange of experience is another step towards strengthening the resilience of our local communities. This includes individual counseling, holding retreat sessions in safer places, which bring people back to life, as it were. I thank all those who have helped us in this work, especially our partners, thanks to whom we've managed to carry out this project. Your contribution helps us keep our belief and confidence in our victory. Thank you for your trust. Together we are strong, and this is the main thing that matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Irina. That was wonderful. I sometimes have a little difficulty understanding the concept of resilience, but you've brought that to life tremendously. Thank you very much indeed. And what you're saying chimes a little bit with quite a lot with the survey that BEARR has undertaken, and there's some preliminary findings on our website, which really does cite this issue of burnout and the need for more psychological assistance. So I will now, we're going to take questions after Meryem has spoken, so I will introduce her now. Meryem Osmanalyeva is Country Director of OASIS, an organization dedicated to safeguarding the rights of vulnerable children and women in Kyrgyzstan. She's known to us in the UK a little bit because she spent time at University College London earning a master's degree in social development practice. And she's also a graduate of the Academy of Civic Education on the Council of Europe School of Political Studies. Her area of expertise includes countering human trafficking, gender-based violence, and illegal migration, as well as the development of democratic institutions. There is a lovely report from Meryem and OASIS from 2023 on the BEARR website. I do recommend that you go and look at that. Meryem, over to you. Thank you very much.
Good evening, participants. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for invitation. For me, this is the first time. I also want to express my solidarity with our colleagues in Ukraine. So our hearts are with you. So if you allow me to describe and give information about what's going on in Kyrgyzstan in terms of challenges, I want to highlight, in terms of, about the positive aspects. So the civil society sector in the Kyrgyz Republic is considered as one of the strongest in Central Asia, and last year our government, our president, they adopted and signed a bill concerning foreign representative. And also it impacted to OASIS, because OASIS, we have been working with the most vulnerable children in Kyrgyzstan, graduates of orphanages, at-risk youth, migrant children, children in conflict with the law, also sometimes refugees, providing them humanitarian aid, direct assistance, post-institutional support programs. So, of course, we started, panicking and worrying about this event, this bill, and most of our NGOs in Kyrgyzstan, they started to begin considering closure, with some even contemplating relocation because of fear of political persecution. And while some NGOs have shut down, others like OASIS have continued the operational work as usual. And in light of these changes, we have begun to reassess our approaches, in particular, our cooperation with state agencies and public ministries. So we concerned that they may be unwilling to work with us, or maybe impose barriers that hinder our efforts to assist the most vulnerable population. Because we, in our work, we closely cooperate with social services, social educators, and we started to concern also. And then, we started to reassess, and we realized that our initial approach to strengthening social partnerships, particularly in providing direct assistance to victims of violence and trafficking, especially among migrants, children, and women, has been effective. So we began collaborating even intensively with state agencies to identify not only the needs of our beneficiaries, but also, we started to identify their challenges. And I think that we did a small research with social services about their needs. As well, we included law enforcement agencies, how we can cooperate. Maybe they are struggling with expertise or resources, or sometimes psychological even support, as many social workers, representative of law enforcement agencies, social educators, they experience burnout, and they also need some kind of support. And I think that this year we conducted together several activities with the Ministry of Labor, Social Protection and Migration, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, on fostering effective referral mechanism. So in assisting not only migrant children, victims of violence, but also we started to think about how we can assist also victims of trafficking, because it was a huge issue in Kyrgyzstan, because we are the country with 30% of working age population, 30% of working age population are in migration, and 90% of them in Russia. And we realized that the trend of migration is growing to Russia. More and more people started to migrate to Russia because, as you know, Russia, they do have shortage of workforce. Maybe they do have deficit 4.8 million people because of many young people leaving Kyrgyzstan, Russia, and they need new people, new migrants, and that's why I think that we have even more children left without parental care, especially living in rural places, in suburbs of Bishkek city, in urban areas, in informal settlements, which are mostly become victims of violence and trafficking. And also, another concern was about sustainability. How we will ensure our finance for 2024, 2025, and for long term. And in this regard, we also started to contemplate about social enterprise. You can congratulate us. In April, we registered our own social enterprise, which provides services on research, analysis, educational services, consulting services. And we were able to generate about more than $12,000, which is good for us for beginning to support our activities. And happily, United Nations on Drug and Crime, Friedrich Ebert Foundation, they started to order their services to our new social enterprise. They started to collaborate with us, understanding the current situation in Kyrgyzstan. And we also negotiated with other partners, and they are willing to, to support our social enterprise in 2025. So we are in the process of developing business plan now. So, I mean, in the midst of huge challenges and crisis, we were able also to transform our policies. And happily, most of them, they were successful. We will continue working in Kyrgyzstan, protecting the most vulnerable people, especially children, because we realize that especially
Sorry, Miriam. Miriam? Sorry, you got muted. Sorry, Miriam?
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now? Sorry. Yeah. So we are planning to continue working in Kyrgyzstan despite any challenges, because we realize that social services, social educators, and they need us. And we also align to our memorandum of understanding with the Ministry of Labor, Social Protection and Migration. Especially, they see us as the main organization, which usually assist in helping orphanages, closed residential institutions for children, in providing in-service training for specialists, especially psychologists. So yeah, if you have also other question, I will be glad to answer. But also, I want to also highlight that we had this huge violent attack on international students in Kyrgyzstan in May 2024. You know, thousands of international students from Pakistan and India, they were attacked and they left Kyrgyzstan, and some of them, they started to come back, but they are concerning about their, you know, safety. And we also work on this issue with state agencies, how we can also collaborate in this referral, establishing effective referral mechanism in providing assistance to foreign citizens, not only foreign migrants, but also not only refugees, but also international students. So thank you for your attention.
Very much, Miriam. Taken away a few things from there, and it sort of reiterates the need for personal agency, people to have control over their lives, and it sort of also supports the messages around the need for real local input into programs if they're going to have an effect. I just a curiosity I have was really when you approached the state agencies, did you find it was easy for them to accept an NGO and to sort of come in and help with training, or did you find that it was easier at a local level than at a national level? How did that all happen? Are they used to working with NGOs?
Yeah, actually, as I highlighted before, civil society organizations in Kyrgyzstan are the most active and vivid across Central Asia. So historically, we have a real strong civil society among all Central Asian countries, and they used to work. You know, they worked in previously with a lot of NGOs, and they saw us as their allies. But you know, I think that this message that this bill is against politically active NGOs, I think that this was clear that we shouldn't interfere into political activity or advocate for any you know, changes in even parliament or criticize our politicians. I think that we shouldn't interfere to this kind of activities, and this kind of clear message. Let's put aside all political issues. Let us concentrate on social injustice and social issues. And I think that we have in this law exception in terms of, you know, as OASIS, we are working with the most vulnerable people. In this law, we have also exception. We don't need to register if we are working with at-risk women and children and on environmental issues. So we are eligible for this kind of criteria, and we don't need to register our organization, even though we do have funding from international or foreign donors, because we are working in close cooperation with state agencies. I think that we also made a clear message also to the ministry, to our stakeholders, that we are not enemies. We are solving the same issue, and we are working with the same community. We are instead of, you know, acting against you, we are helping you. So
thank you. Okay, we do have a question online, but can I see if there are any questions for Miriam?
Miriam, it's Charles Garrett here. It's great to see you on the screen there. London Donis Salam. I'd be very interested to hear your thoughts on how much you're able to engender support and activism among individual citizens in Kyrgyzstan. About, I mean, it's wonderful what OASIS are doing there, but how successful have you been in encouraging individual citizens to support your effort and the wider efforts in the field?
Yeah, this is a Yeah, this is a good, excellent question. I think that we have this Bilim Belek crowdfunding platform among local citizens, where we usually collect for educational, program. This is an educational program to support, training and courses for our at-risk youth if they do have problem with the access to formal and non-formal education. We usually raise this kind of funding from locals, and it has been running successfully for more than 5 years, because we have not only locals but also business organizations which usually support, education of vulnerable people, especially graduates of orphanages. But starting from this year, we started to kind of reconsider how we can also fundraise for our social work, because for a long time we were dependent on grants and foreign funding, which have been supporting us for a long time. But starting from this year, we started to reconsider how we can change this program to also fundraise for our core costs for our social workers. And I'm so thankful to the BEARR Fund that you continue supporting us. So yeah, for this, for us, this is a big challenge for 2025, and we are willing to change this crowdfunding platform Bilim Belek to also fundraise for social work and Oasis Central cause.
Thank you. Thank you. Any more questions on the floor? Oh, Megan. Oh, Megan. Sorry. Thank you. So we have a question from Megan. A similar question for Irina. How is it possible, given your difficult living circumstances, to both attract new volunteers and keep those volunteers who've been helping you since the start of the war?
Дякую за запитання. Справа в тому, що
Well, thank you
з
for this
самого
question.
початку
The thing
війни,
is that from the
коли
very
у нас був такий
start
великий
of the
виклик,
war,
більшість
when this
людей,
huge
фактично
challenge
з простих
occurred,
громадян, стали багато самі
a lot of people,
активістами,
ordinary
громадськими
cитizens,
діячами, і вони
everyday
наскільки могли,
Ukrainians
настільки підтримували
became activists,
людей.
and they
Тому
tried to help
саме
others
з цих питань,
as much as they could.
з цього питання нам
So,
було легше,
in this
тому що нам не
respect,
потрібно було пояснювати
it was
людям,
quite
чому
easy for us
потрібно
because we
бути
didn't have
волонтером
to
або
explain to
для чого
people
допомагати
why
людям. Це якби
volunteering is so
це було
important,
таке,
why
ну,
it is
якби
necessary to
внутрішнє
help
покликання кожного
others,
українця.
because that idea was kind of
Щодо
internalized
того, як
by
втримати
each and
тих,
every
хто вже
Ukrainian
працював з
after the
нами,
beginning of the full-scale war.
звичайно,
As
війна
regards
внесла
keeping
свою
those who
корективу,
have
тому
been with
що
us
більшість з нас
for years,
були
of course,
вимушені
the war
покинути
has changed the
свої
situation
місця
somewhat
з
because
Нікополя і стати
some people
внутрішньо
had
переміщеними
to leave
людьми.
and
Хтось
they
залишався в місті Нікополь.
fled
Тому
Nikopol, but others
була така
stayed on.
потреба, яким чином скоординувати
So
всю нашу роботу,
there was a
щоб
need for us to
самоорганізація не зупинила свою
re-coordinate
І
our
в
work
цьому
to make
питанні
sure
нам
that
також
our
ми
organization
вибрали такі інструменти,
keeps
як
on operating.
дистанційна робота.
We
Тобто
also
більш гнучкіші стали до потреб
in
саме нашої команди.
using
Завдяки цьому ми
remote
змогли
mode of
втримати
our
саме
cooperation
ту команду
and
і
other
костяк, який у нас і
innovative
був.
forms, which made it possible for us to keep the core of the personnel which we've had for years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also will contribute. I think that Oasis scope of work, we work with the most vulnerable people, and not all young people want to work with this kind of people, with these kind of vulnerable people. And also, I think that our volunteers, they should have some skills and knowledge. But happily, we do have interns, which usually write to us official letters to, to be like a social worker or they want to gain some, knowledge or practice in working with victims of violence or trafficking. So in this regard, I think that we created kind of community of pro bono psychologists and also pro bono lawyers. We do have maybe 15 pro bono psychologists and also plus about 12 pro bono lawyers, which usually help us in providing direct assistance to victims and vulnerable migrants. But plus also we have young volunteers, which usually are involved in working in different kind of events, and also they are actively involved in crowdfunding activities, promoting Oasis in different platforms. We try to also involve volunteers, local volunteers, but also not only the local, but international volunteers from other countries.
Thank you. We are, I think we're coming to the end of our time, but if we could have one more question, please. And we have to do one from Armen.
Institute London, yeah, I volunteer and I'm also a founder. Hello? Yes, can you hear me? So my question is to Irina and Miriam.
Can you hear the question?
Can you hear the question? Both of you are professionals with quite long experience in civil society. From your experience of what you are observing, is civil society actually making greater impact over the years right now, or it's on the contrary, civil society is making lesser impact for some reason? And what are the factors that civil society is making greater or lesser impact?
So it's a big question and we don't have a lot of time, but please, Irina, if you'd like to start answering that question.
Да, добре. Дуже таке, я думаю, питання важливе.
Well, this is a very relevant question.
Із цього, що можна так сказати, громадське
My take on this is like this. Civil society activities after the start of the full-scale war assumed a special importance in our country. If before the war, some people had to do their best to make their case in cooperation with the state bodies of power about why civil society impact is so important. But now it's so obvious to everyone that you don't have to do any explaining. Quite the opposite. The government and the state bodies of power reach out to us to encourage us to work, especially as regards working in pre-frontline areas. The governmental structures are looking for us and trying to engage us in solving the problems that the government is unable of solving these days. So I can say that the bottom line is that since the beginning of the large-scale war, the role and impact of the civic society has grown, and we understand that it's only by shared efforts that we can survive in this terrible war and prevail.
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting question and kind of challenging question. I just want to reply that, when this bill was adopted, I think that all civil society organizations in Kyrgyzstan, they were in a huge despair, and now we have the feeling of acceptance, and I think that we accepted the situation. And even though we don't want to participate anymore in any kind of roundtables, conferences, because we know, it it can be it can influence to our work. But we've noticed that state agencies invite us, they need us. They want to collaborate with us. They want our expertise. They want us to involve in conducting different events. And in this regard, I think that this is how, I think that they miss us at some point. And we realize, especially in Kyrgyzstan, the influence of 20 years of active work of civil society organizations. Even though now we do have this bill, state agencies, they realize that they cannot work and function without civil society organization, because they realize that we are the voice of the most vulnerable people. We are the voice of ordinary people. We are the voice of, we are gathering local knowledge. We have local expertise. We are not the kind of alien organization which are trying to push some kind of, Western ideas or alien ideas into, Asian, Central Asian country, trying to, to be some kind of, so I think that all this, throughout of these 20 years, we proved that civil society organizations represent ordinary people. And now, even though this bill was adopted, we feel that they need us, and we are willingly to participate with in their events as their allies now, not as like their NGOs, not as like foreign representative, but they see us as local experts and holders of local knowledge.
Well, thank you, Irina. Thank you, Miriam, for both of that. I think that's a terrific message to end this session on. We need civil society organizations. Please, could you give a round of applause for Daria?
Hello, starting again now. Thank you to everybody online who stayed with us. And thank you to all our panelists who have stayed with us, because we still have questions to answer from the previous panels. I'm Janet Gunn. I'm a trustee of the BEARR Trust, and we're going to take off really quickly now. I think we'll go back to Megan's question about funding, and she said funding problems are being faced by all. Gulrukhsor mentioned encouraging international donors to work with small local groups. This is something BEARR tries to do. What can be done to help the needs of these groups, to promote their needs to the larger international donors? Have any of our panelists got any ideas of how the big international donors can be persuaded by the smaller ones to fund small groups? Anybody?
Hi, I can give some thoughts on that. Vicky Fletcher from Centre Gulrukhsor again. We were very privileged to be part of a panel, focus group research that was conducted by the UN Trust Fund to end violence against women and girls, about how the UN and how donors can work better with civil society organizations. And if you look on the websites of the UN Trust Fund to end violence against women and girls, their research about how to work with civil society and how to do that is there. Now, there's lots of kind of bad practice about how to do it, and there's lots of good practice about how to do it. And so one of the key things that came out of working with larger organizations, working with smaller organizations is around trust, flexibility, support, understanding. And so one of the things that we would really recommend and ask for about working with larger donors is first of all about training. You know, the best donors, they have very large requirements. You know, they have a whole load of their safeguarding things that they have to properly comply with. But when you're given training about how to comply, what you need to do, and the donor invests money into that, then that's really useful for local organizations. On the bad practice is where you get sent a contract that's maybe 30 pages long, hasn't been translated into the local language, has got 3 million subpoints and annexes that you were also supposed to do, or just links to documents that are on the internet that aren't even actually sent to you. And then when it comes to finishing the grant, in Annex 3.16.1, you didn't comply, and we're taking money off you. And that has happened to us this year. And only for a small amount of money, for 200 euros. But 200 euros to an international donor should be a learning opportunity for the local partner, not a fine. And local partners have to account, we have to account for even where we have a bank fee of 1 samoni, that is like less than $8. We have to provide documentation of how we spent those 8 cents. I have to print out the piece of paper and put it in a folder so that when the auditor comes, it's there. And I have to spend every single cent to zero. So when they hold back 200 euros, because I haven't complied with 0.16.1 in Annex 3, where am I supposed to get that 200 euros from? Because I have to spend in every project, every penny. Nobody gives me any spare change. So do I deduct it from my staff and say you should contribute that out of your own pocket? So there has to be this kind of, you know, if there are mistakes, okay, if they're massive mistakes, then those need to be addressed seriously. But we also have to have a bit of flexibility. We have to have lessons learned. We have to be properly trained. We need to be supported. And then also, as larger organizations look to work with local organizations, it doesn't have to be a kind of black or white, yes or no answer. You know, we can have stepping stones. So if you say, well, actually on this theme in this country, we don't feel that there are local partners that meet our requirements, well, let's partner up with an intermediary in the meantime. So let's take an INGO, an international NGO who has got that. Let's do mentoring, let's do capacity building, and let's over a period of time move that so that the local organization can then do it. So it was a 70-30, then it was a 50-50, then it was a 30-70, and then you've got a stage progression. The other thing is that the main success of an NGO, of a civil society organization, comes from your staff. You know, it's personal factors. And fortunately, unfortunately, staff need money. You know, we have to be able to pay reasonable salaries. We have to be able to support people to live reasonable lives. And if we have funding cycles that are very unstable, we have no understanding of our financial stability, that makes it very hard to hang on to decent staff. And then when you don't have decent staff, it's very hard to then deliver high quality programming. So, you know, if you're going from a place where you've had unstable and poor financing, and then somebody says, well, you haven't got a team. Well, how am I supposed to have a team when I haven't got money? So these kind of things go round in a circle, but somebody has to break that circle, and somebody has to say, here I see a civil society organization that has got great links into their community, that is trusted and is valued. And okay, they might not 100% comply with every one of my 96 tick boxes, but they comply with enough, and I'm going to teach them the rest of it.
Thank you. That was very useful, Vicky. I hope that some of the large organisations that will read our report of the conference and learn from it. I'm going to come back to the issue of core funds later, because that links into what you've been talking about and what others have spoken about already. Funding for the organisation itself. But first, I want to give Armen an opportunity to have an answer to his question, which was to Miriam, I think. Do social enterprises receive any tax benefits from the government in your country? And do we still have Miriam? Yes, we do. I think the answer is no. I think that's a no, I'm afraid. No tax benefits.
No. No, in Kyrgyz Republic, we if social enterprise related to, for instance, people with sorry, I'm just jumping into this discussion. In Kyrgyz Republic, we usually do not have any preferences, any tax reduction in terms of social enterprise. I think that the only exception is for social enterprise which work with people with disabilities. They do have, some kind of support from government, but if we are working with, for instance, victims of violence or victims of trafficking, labor migrants, they don't see us as social enterprise. We have to, work according to all legislative documents and pay taxes also.
Thank you, Miriam. Now, I don't have any more questions in the chat. We'll take some more questions from the room, and then I'll go back to a couple of points that have come up earlier. Do we have questions from this room? No, it seems not. Oh,
Ivan had his hand raised. Maybe Ivan wants to.
Ivan, you want to come in on this? Please do.
Yeah, a little bit. Thank you for allowing me point some valuable points about cooperation between local smaller NGOs and the global ones, big international NGOs. Just a small point of view from the local. I think two main points are there. Firstly, basically, lots of small NGOs have no access to bigger NGOs. Talking about us, we came from nothing. We are still growing, we continue growing, and when we were started, we have had zero at all, zero connections, zero funding, zero everything. And it was a very, very complicated process to find contacts in the world of NGOs, because usually no one gives you proper contacts for partnership people, for some employees that do some decisions in the field of partnership or funding partners. Usually you can just Google somewhere email like info@name of organization and try to connect through info, going through some chatbots or some thank you very much, we will be in touch with you. That's the point. How to deal with it? Conferences, some forums, and so on. That's the thing. Like this forum, like this conference. I'm sorry. Like this conference, it's a really nice thing to cooperate, to find the people who think the same, who work in the same field, because not everyone can enter the conference. That's why if you are invited, that's why other people who are there can understand that you know something, you do the job, you do things quite nice, so you were there, you were invited. And the second thing is that the locals usually have some problems with finding money for their operational costs. Locals like our NGO work through grant system. They get the money. Sometimes money covers only the the procurement for the things that you deliver. Sometimes they cover the salary for employees directly involved in implementing the project. But very, very small amount of grants allow us to give some funding for those who work in the field of sustainability of NGO. There are lots of possibilities to try to cooperate with businesses, with other NGOs, to do the strategic planning, to find new ways and new strategies of giving the assistance. But it needs people resources, and people have to be employed to do something. And that's why it's necessary for small NGOs to find costs for operational procedures, because without it, growing and existing in long term is very, very complicated. Even bigger grants like the global NGOs allowed to apply for, like, UN agencies allowed to apply for, there are some costs for sustainability, about 7% or 5% somewhere, but it's not the rule. It's exception from the rule, And the final small point is that sometimes when you try to apply for some grant, you do not get the proper feedback. You just get the reply that you were chosen by the grant contest, or you were not chosen. And a small NGO needs to understand why they were not chosen or they were chosen, to be better, to create better offers, to calculate better projects, and to increase the skills. But not all the NGOs provide a big feedback, because that's the thing. Thank you very much.
That's very useful. Thank you, Ivan. Do any of our other panelists want to come in on this discussion of core operational funds and feedback and in general relations with donors? Anybody want to come in? Just raise your hand if you can see you all.
I just want to jump in and add some comments. In Kyrgyzstan, we cooperate with United Nations on Drug and Crime. So I think that this kind of partnership helps us also, to collaborate with effectively with other donors, making sure that because organizations like OASIS, we are frontline organization working directly with beneficiaries. Sometimes we do not have time for data collection, analysis, and thinking about capacity building. And this is how I think that in Kyrgyzstan, collaboration with UNODC helps us to analyze our work also in terms of how effectively we are working on, with children in conflict with the law or on human trafficking. I think that this kind of collaboration and data sharing helps us a lot. But at the same time, we see how this process can be so, complicated and with a lot of bureaucracy, and also pushing on us, some kind of international agenda things, which, it can be on gender sensitivity, on many other things related to human rights. They could be a lot of requirements, which sometimes we do not have time even to ponder. And I think that in this regard, it would be great also to respect our local expertise rather than pushing on us sometimes kind of international expertise or, international agenda, to think about how we can value local context and think about local needs and how we can think about innovative approaches based on, needs of local frontline organizations, their benefits. Maybe they have another innovative solution rather than, international solutions, which always, I think that throughout all these 20 years, we tried on different kind of, I always love to say, deer jacket, rather than our native Chapan, Kyrgyz Chapan. I mean, even in parliamentary system, when European Commission implemented a lot of projects about, fostering parliamentary system, helping civil society organizations to work effectively with state agents, we've noticed that there were a lot of side effects in terms of, some ideas were alien for us, for Asian culture, for Kyrgyz culture. And I think that we felt it. And this is how people started to tell about, hey, we have our own ancient values of democracy. We have long history of democracy. Why you're pushing on us kind of, this kind of parliamentarism, it doesn't fit us, And this kind of trend I've noticed in many sectors, even in child protection, when some kind of experts, they pushed on us some, ideas about reform of deinstitutionalization. I think that all of us, we want children live in foster care or in families. We all want, but I think approaches which were implemented in Kyrgyzstan, I think sometimes it was not according to our own culture. I think that respecting cultural differences, local context, and local knowledge is so important in working with local frontline organizations because we are closer to our beneficiaries. And this is how I think hearing the voices of local organizations is so important when you even try to, I don't know, change some kind of policies at the international level. And this is how I think that our government even started to be kind of reluctant. And they started to think about that, oh no, we do have our own democracy model. We do have our own model of respecting children's rights. We do have our own model of, foster care system even. And I think that this is how we started to realize, oh, we need to respect ourselves. We need to respect, to think about bottom-up approach, not top-down approach. I think that this is how I think that we can explore new ways of cooperating with international agencies. I just want to tell about it, that it's time to us to reconsider many approaches, how we need to treat local frontline organizations.
Thank you. That's all very useful. Now, I think there's another point that is worth raising, which is organizational resilience. If nobody else wants to comment on the relationship between donors and small organizations. The BEARR Trust has in recent years been giving grants to civil society organizations to support organizational resilience, in particular in countries where there's considerable stress. And I wondered whether, and our survey that we undertook, the most recent one, the results of that showed that support for staff and volunteers is very much needed because there's a lot of burnout, and it's already been mentioned a few times today. Do any of our panelists or indeed anybody else present want to come in on this issue?
Можна тоді я прокоментую?
Please do, Irina.
I would like to comment.
В принципі, в своїй промові я сьогодні
Well, basically, in my intervention, I briefly touched upon this issue, and I would like to re-emphasize the importance of support for the personnel and anything else that could strengthen organizational sustainability and resilience. It has always been important for us, but now even more so, because just like general populace in Ukraine is suffering from the war and has problems with mental health, the same can be said about volunteers activists and people from our organizations. Of course, we have to support each other. And what BEARR Trust is doing, and the example that I cited in my intervention, is extremely important for us to better understand each other and to prioritize our efforts and to move in the right direction. These considerations are especially important now, even more than they were before the war. So I'd like to draw the attention of our partners, including international donors, that this is something that badly needs their support, especially now, so that the civil society sector in Ukraine would be able to grow, would be able to be resilient, and so that people, of course, as well, would be resilient in order to withstand all the rigors of the war, which is still raging on. So with this, I would like to thank BEARR Trust once again for their support in that respect. Some activists who came from Nikopol being a pre-frontline city, which is constantly under shelling, when those people came to safer places, we saw them trying to cock their ears, trying to figure out if there are any suspicious noises, because they were accustomed to the noises of war. And for them, it works like this. When you hear an explosion, then you know that after the explosion, you will have a brief slot of time to dash out, to go to the grocery store or something else. So people have to be very careful about how they use their time. So they have to be always aware of the external dangers of the war. So trying to help people deal with the emotional burnout is absolutely key. Thank you.
Thank you, Irina. Any more points on this? I don't think so. Well, I'll go back to a question I put in the Q&A earlier on, which is about awareness raising. We had in our first panel quite a lot of information about work with domestic violence and with people with disability, living with disability, and awareness both of what people's rights are according to the law and awareness of what help and support is available. My question was, to what extent do you find the mass media and social media helpful in getting out these messages and also getting feedback about this situation? Maybe Armen might want to comment.
Yeah, thank you. I noticed this question, but I waited for the chance to respond. Actually, yeah, Armenian mass media are interested to cover issues of disabled people. In theory, it's like this, but there are two problems. First of all, they are mostly focused on international days like December 3rd, International Day of People with Disabilities, like European Day of Independent Living, May 5th, etc. So it's not in their everyday focus, but okay, this is understandable. The other thing is that the coverage is mostly very stereotypical. They use stereotypical expressions, language, like they try to be correct, and say not people with disabilities, but rather people with special needs or with limited abilities, which is nonsense, because we are talking about the official language of CRPD, which is persons with disabilities. And also there are the coverage is mostly very sad, you know, emotional, sad. For example, if there is a report of on a person with disability who succeeded in his life, his or her life, who maybe is employed or has a family, has children, etc. It is you can expect some positive background, some positive music, etc. But if it when it comes to disabilities, the music is always very sad, you know. And we are trying to challenge this. For example, we produced several PSAs, public service announcements, or social videos, as it is commonly said. And one of our videos, the most successful one, which attracted thousands of hundreds of thousands viewers, which for Armenia is a huge amount for a social video. It was humorous. So I think it's quite innovative and correct to cover the issues, serious issues, with some sense of humor. Of course, we should not exaggerate. It's not a comics books, but still, it's not you cannot always expect tragical reports or tragical destinies. And in this video, which was aimed at promotion of work employment opportunities for people with disabilities, produced a fantastic effect. Many employers approached us and asked if they can hire a person with disability, and that they are interested to be more inclusive and to be more active in these social issues. So yes, coverage is enough, the amount of coverage, but generally the quality of coverage is poor. We need more proactive actions, more proactive campaigns, both related to some international events or dates, or not related. Well, in brief, like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Armen. There's a clear message there. Make your public information positive and at times humorous. That's a good message. Gulrukhsor, any comments there on public awareness raising? Anybody there? No. Yeah.
Да, действительно, работа СМИ у нас как бы.
Indeed, when we talk about mass media, we cooperate with them. But if we try to think positive, indeed, we have to be more proactive in developing kind of positive clips for younger children, for younger people, so the teenagers, younger people, and public as such are aware of the fact that there is no way for violence, that violence is prohibited. We have to still move along a long path here. But if we talk about negative side of the events, then for the past many years, violence through informational technologies, through online means has to be addressed, because cyberbullying is something which you cannot very proactively counteract, because very often cyberbullying can be said that you are pressing upon my freedom of speech. And if we speak about hate speech, many people would say, this is the way I try to be free and liberal in expressing my ideas. Because very often when you're commenting something in the national language, other people may take it as a hate language. So despite the status that any person has, every person has to be given the freedom of speech in the online space, at the same time being somehow narrowed by the overall rules of social speech and behavior. We are now doing this research and survey. It is still underway, but we need to find some golden mean, how we can assist women who may become victims because of IT technologies. Thank you.
I can also share our experience in Kyrgyzstan. We try to collaborate with several well-known media agencies in Kyrgyzstan, like Current Time, Liberty Media, and many other media agencies, which are helping mostly us to, analyze data about at-risk children, and plus bring some stories about how, for instance, graduates of orphanages are living in Kyrgyzstan, what kind of social issues they do have in terms of accessing formal and non-formal education, basic needs. And it helps us to promote sometimes, public discussions. And we've noticed several times when, for instance, we had cases on human trafficking where high officials also were involved. We were able to raise voices of not only victim, but also public opinion. A lot of people started to advocate for the rights of some of our beneficiaries. And this is how we won several court proceedings. This is how we were able to even did some amendments into legislation. I think that even now, even though we are restricted in many sense, we cooperate with mass media if we want to raise some issues, not only from us, but from from people. From usually we sit at the table with journalists and think about our strategy, what we want to achieve, what kind of current issues we want to for instance, raise awareness about. And I think that it helps in, even though we do have persecution of journalists, but still we do have free media in Kyrgyzstan, which usually love cooperating with us, and it helps a lot.
Thank you, Miriam. Question. I have two questions from the floor. I think I saw Stephen first.
Stephen DL once again. When I questioned earlier, when I mentioned how in Britain we've made a lot of advances in the last 50 years, but we're still not there when it comes to dealing with people, particularly people with special needs. So I'm thinking particularly, Armen, this may be one for you, but please, anyone, I'd like to hear your comments. I was appalled to read a story on the BBC this week about a blind man who was refused entry into a restaurant because he had his guide dog with him. Not just that, but what made it even worse, but there were certain people in the restaurant who were actively opposing him and said, this is disgraceful, out you go, how can you bring a dog in here? Despite the fact it's a guide dog. It was an appalling story, and he said this has happened to him a number of times. It's perhaps continuing what we were just talking about in terms of, but not in terms of media or social media. I mean, social media, as we know, is a dark area where people can hide themselves and say the most vile things. But in terms of openness in society, do you come across people in society who, as I say, we've an example this week here in Britain, where there are people who are openly nasty and unpleasant and opposed to people with special needs? And if so, how do you deal with that?
Question. I think we'll take the other questions as well now from Charles, and then any of our panelists can answer either of the questions or both.
So my question is probably directed mostly at Gulrukhsor and Yerevan, and it's about the operating environment that you have in Central Asia, and how much it's influenced by powerful forces like the revival of Islam and developments in influential neighboring countries. Like the new legislation which took steps backward on domestic violence against women in Russia. Influences like that. Could you say something about that and the impact on your operating environment?
Thanks. Now, I think if we could take any comments first on Stephen's question about hostility and unpleasantness towards people with special needs. Did you want to comment any of our panelists? Armen?
I can comment on this. Well, sometimes we encounter such situations. For example, recently there was a situation when the group of disabled children were trying to use a public pool, a commercial pool, swimming pool, and actually it was aqua park, not just swimming pool, but some different facilities, and the security did not allow them in because they explained it that it will be dangerous for disabled children to take some bath or to swim, etc. Such stupid things. Then a huge campaign started in media and in social media, and the management of this place publicly apologized, and they invited the same group and other groups to visit their place for free, etc. So yes, especially Facebook is effective. Facebook is the most popular social media in Armenia, and for example, if I write Facebook status, it will about an issue, about an urgent issue, it will get a much quicker response from decision makers or private organizations of the government than if I wrote official letter, on the letterhead of Unison, etc. Yeah, so the social media is not only social media, of course, but especially social media helps us fight this inappropriate things which are sometimes to disabled people with disabilities. By the way, I am using both disabled people or people with disabilities because in European Network on Independent Living we prefer disabled people, the term, and globally it is more common to say persons with disabilities, but just to explain my point. And yes, it's really important, but the problem, just to conclude this issue from my point of view, also is that many of the people with disabilities do not want to be covered. They do not want to appear in front of the camera, to speak. They are ready to complain to us, but when it comes to raising the issue on a publicly on TV or on other media or social media, they say, "Oh no, please do not show me, do not do not say my name to anybody." And it is a real issue, and so we have to work hard to let them become active citizens rather than just complaining people. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we found in the UK that people are more likely now to go public with it. We had a recent case of a well-known reporter for the BBC who was paralyzed from the waist down after a shooting incident in a war that he was covering some years ago. And he took a flight on an airline that I won't mention here, which had no onboard wheelchair to take him to the toilet on the aeroplane. And he actually took a photograph of his legs as he had to crawl down the length of the aeroplane to go to the toilet. And he photographed his legs on the floor and put it all over social media, and it was in all the newspapers. And I suspect that airline has taken some measures to improve their performance since. And as for Charles's question, Gulrukhsor or Yerevan, do you have any comments on the climate on domestic violence and issues like that from the point of view of organizations and public bodies that may be influencing public opinion on this?
Yeah.
Vicky, yeah?
Okay, yeah. So a bit like in what we were saying in Kyrgyzstan, it's very similar in Tajikistan. We've got to build good relationships with government. We've got to be proactive. We've got local organizations. If you show that you're relevant, if you show that you can do a good job, if you show that you're actually going to help the local population, if you work positively, then you can build very good relationships with government and local stakeholders and law enforcement. And so much of our work and so many of the women that have come to us are referred by government, courts, law enforcement, and making that network work for you, because there's government representatives down to every street in Tajikistan. If they know about you, if they respect you, if they understand that you can do a good job, then your authority, your power, your influence is just massively multiplied because you can reach everywhere. So it's so important. And the Tajik government are very supportive about violence against women. But also, again, from Kyrgyzstan, we're saying, you've got to respect us that we need to do it our way as well. In Tajikistan, many of the women, like as Gulrukhsor said in her main speech, there aren't great options. Women in Tajikistan don't have the same opportunities that women in the UK have to leave violent relationships. There's no social housing. There's no social security to support. It's very, very difficult. In Tajikistan, your family is your support network. If you choose to leave your violent family and therefore lose your parents, particularly on the way, you've got no support network. There is no support network. You're completely on your own. It's a very difficult decision to make. Therefore, most women want help to stay. They want help to improve those family relationships. In the UK, we would think of it as family counselling, marital counselling. This is what people want here. How can I calm down these relationships in my house? How can I make peace? How do I do forgiveness? Now, when we say, you need to forgive this, in some circles that seems as really bad, like why should a victim of violence forgive their perpetrator? But if we look at it in Western terms, we could say like healing from trauma, we could say those kind of things. And so actually it's kind of two sides of the same question, but they look different from the outside. And, some of the real practical advice that we give to Tajik women about how you can calm down violent situations in your home, maybe a Western feminist would look at that and say, oh my God, what are you telling people? But this is the reality here. This is the reality of how to make violent homes peaceful homes so that women can actually live and be part of their family. And then with our support, become empowered, get some voice, get some respect, and calm those family relationships down, which we have been able to do. So we have to have this local approach. It's not the same approach to family relationships across the whole world. And we do, as women's rights advocates, as feminists across the world, we do have to understand that there is not just one way for relationships. There are a number of ways that relationships have to be considered. One of the other parts of the question was about religion. And I think we have to understand that in all countries, ex-Soviet Union countries, there is a massive desire to reconnect with religion, not just in Muslim countries, but in Christian countries across the ex-Soviet Union as well. religion is a very important part of lives to many people, and it is a very important part of people's lives here. But we, in our trainings, in our seminars, in our outreach, there is a lot of parts of Islamic teaching and Muslim practices that can be used to give women feelings of support, feelings of that you're not alone, feelings of dealing with shame, of trauma, of looking after disabled children, of being disabled yourself. And again, this is about us building relationships into those religious leaders, into those religious communities, into our own personal understanding of Islamic teaching, so that we can cooperate and build those relationships and work with religious leaders who are willing to stand up and say, as happened in our roundtable yesterday, just as an example, where a religious leader, male guy, stood up and said, you know, to beat a woman is against our teachings, and you shouldn't be doing it. If you are doing it, you're against us. You're not a proper Muslim. So there's a lot of positive things that we can do, and we need to be doing them.
Thank you very much. I think we're going to have to stop there unless there are any burning points still to come, because we have run already slightly over time, and I'm aware that we've been going for a long time, and I'd like to thank all those people who are online who stayed with us. But stay with us a couple of moments longer, because I want to introduce Ross Gill, who is going to introduce himself and say a few final words.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Janet. Hi, everybody. I'm Ross. I'm a BEARR trustee, and it's falls to me just to close the conference today and thank everybody for coming. I'll thank everybody a bit more for coming in just a moment. But thanks just to start with to all of the panelists today, and to all those who facilitated each of the panels. And a special thanks as well to our administration and information officer, Baldoni, who's done much of the organisation for today. These things don't just happen, do they? They happen because people make it happen. So thanks, Baldoni, and to everybody else that's helped make today a success. I'm not going to try and sum up in massive detail everything that's been said this morning, otherwise that'll take us another 3 hours and I'll say everything again. But right at the start, Nicola used this term polycrisis. So we talked about this conference today as being about innovation in the time of crisis, and he used this phrase polycrisis. And in a way that's very important because it came out very much from all of the panelists today, how the nature of crisis and the nature of the situation that everybody's dealing with is so contextually important and contextually different. And I think that was a good sort of starting point for us today. We talked quite a bit about crisis as being a driver of innovation, and the immediate response that community-based organisations have had either to an immediate and sudden crisis, as we heard in the context of Ukraine, or a crisis which is perhaps an ongoing crisis of domestic violence, which is there and constant, and how that need has been a spur to community-based organisations to take action, and in taking action to demonstrate effectiveness and therefore to build up credibility with their own beneficiaries and with governments and so on as well. We talked a lot about, or the panelists talked a lot about beneficiary involvement and the involvement of communities in designing and delivering services as well, which I think was a key theme to take away from today. I think, though, perhaps the thing that overarches all of this, and perhaps is the big thing to take away, was quite the big thing to take away for me anyway, was this point about flexibility and relevance to local context, which so many of you made. Some of you talked about some of those challenges that you have in working with those larger aid organisations, the bigger people with lots of money who perhaps put quite a few bureaucratic hurdles in the way, and how you get around that. And you talked as well about how it's useful to learn from the experience that others might have, whether that's others in the same country or elsewhere, or people abroad. But at the same time, that experience needs to be put within the context of you knowing what is right on the ground and what needs to be done. I guess that very much leads into how BEARR sort of sees the world, really, and BEARR's role. We've always been about supporting grassroots community-based organisations and about that relationship of trust between funds that we might make available and those that are there and supporting communities there and on the ground. I suppose just finally, I ought to give a very quick plug to BEARR in that context, and the fact that, as you know, all of our funds, as far as possible, go to the communities that we directly seek to support, the partners we seek to support. To our Ukraine appeal, 100% of all funds that come into the Ukraine appeal go to partners in Ukraine on the ground. So if that's an incentive to any of you who haven't donated, and I'm sure most of you have donated to us many times, if anybody hasn't, there's a pitch for you to do so. So finally, thank you all very much for coming. Especially thank you to those who have joined us coming from Ukraine today as well. Thank you very much for making the journey, and it's really great to see you here. Thank you. Thanks to everybody here. Thanks to everybody online in whichever part of the world you are. Thank you very much. For those that are here in London, there's some lunch, so please help yourself and have a chat. Sorry if you're online, you don't get any lunch, but have some lunch anyway. Thank you very much.